Hello guys, so can you hear me? So just confirm whether the audio and video is clear. So we will wait for few seconds and we'll wait for few minutes and then start. So let wait for few minutes so that all of us join. Hi guys, so can you is my voice and screen clearly visible and audible? Okay, so let's just wait for a few more minutes and then just start with the session. So till then, if you have any queries regarding the last session, you can put them into the chats. So yeah, let's start with the lecture. So is the screen clearly visible? And can you see the CodeChef screen? So let's just start with the first question. So yesterday we discussed some beginner level questions. Today I have curated some more questions. So let's just directly start. So here, so let's just so here you could see our first question. So this is basically from the Hacker Earth. So last time we saw a question from CodeChef. Today we will see a question from Hacker Earth, which is called as divisibility. So can you see the screen and is the voice clearly audible? If anything isn't right, then you can just put a message on the chat box. So just try to read this question and think for an approach how we can do that. I'll just increase the screen size. Yeah, I will just repeat the problem statement and we will give this problem 2 times to think. So first of all, you are provided an array A of size n that contains non-negative integers. Your task is to determine whether the number that is formed by selecting the last digit of all the n numbers is divisible by 10 or not. So first of all, you should know which numbers are divisible by 10, the rule for that, and then we will basically get an array from which we have to choose the last element. So as they have said here, your task is to determine whether the number that is found by selecting last digit of all the n numbers is divisible by 10 or not. So basically, if this question is not clear, what we can do is we can see the sample input and sample output. So basically, they give an basic example how this question should be implemented, and by this we can get a basic idea. So here we are basically getting 5 elements of an array. So first element is 85, from which we will take the last digit, which is 5. Similarly, from 25, the last digit is 5. 65 last digit is 5. 21 last digit is 1. 84 last digit is 4. So we calculate this all, means we collab this all and create a new number 55514, and we check whether this is divisible by 10 or not. So basically, as we can see, it isn't divisible. So what you think how we can approach to this problem? So we'll solve in both Python as well as C++. So let me just shift to Python and then we will come back to C++ itself. So just give a try, think a bit how we can approach, what we can do, and then we will head on to the approach. Yeah, so I received one answer in the chat box, so others can also try to. So let's just think how we will do this. So here, let's just assume we have some random numbers. So I have an array A which contains numbers such as, let's just take any random number, 23, 54, and 32, 51. So let's assume these are the 4 numbers which basically is given in the input. So what we have to do is we have to select the last digit of every element as per the question and then create a new number. So 3, 4, 2, 1. This is our new number and we have to check whether this is divisible by 10 or not. So if we check dividing it by 10, we get a remainder 1. So basically this isn't divisible. So if very layman term, if we think and approach for a very layman, so what we can do is basically iterate through each element, take the last digit. So we can store this in any format. So if we are in Python, so what we can do is we can store these numbers in string format and then just access the last element of that string and then go on adding that number to an empty string and then calculate. So this is one way. So let's just try this, the very basic approach, and then we will think how we can optimize our solution and what all other things we can do with the same question. So yeah, here is our question. So basically they have taken input in the integer and they are doing most of the things for us. Basically they have taken the uh, data as an integer. So instead of taking it as an integer, what we can do is we can keep it as string itself. So then what we can do is we have to iterate through every number. So for I in or for num in range data, so what we will get is each individual string we will get. So what we have to do is we have to extract a single last element. So what we can do is we can create new underscore number, new underscore num as in string, empty string, and then for accessing the last element, what we can do is we can just perform num of -1. So as we know, Python supports negative indexing. So using this, we can access the last element. And what we will do is we will add this into our new num. So this will go on adding the number to the new num value. So at last, after doing this, what we have to do is we have to basically convert this into integer. So new num is equal to new num of integer type. So we'll use integer int. So now we will get the new num as integer. So what we have to basically check is we have to check divisibility. So we can check divisibility by using which operator? So basically we can check this using new num mod 10. So basically if there is no remainder, then we know it is completely divisible. If new num mod 10 gives us some value which is not equal to 0, then the number is not completely divisible. So we can check if new num mod 10 is not equal to 0. So if it is not equal to 0 means what is happening? Answer is equal to no. Why? Because new num mod 10 is returning us some remainder, and due to which uh, it is not completely divisible. Else what we have to do is else we have to print answer equal to yes. So basically here capital YES and no. So let's just uh, compile and test this code. So here we are getting correct answer. So let's just submit this and let's just try. So here we are basically getting runtime error. Let's just check. You didn't print anything. So let me just see. List object cannot be interpreted as integer. So we are basically runtime error means there is some error in the program. So we have to debug this, and I can see here list is for okay. So I'm basically taking this data as an integer, but range expects the first parameter to be integer, but I am passing it the list. So instead of giving range, we have to directly loop through this. So if we now compile and test, let's just see. So it is evaluating. So it just takes a little bit of time. So here we can see sample test case passed as we are getting correct output. So let's just try submitting this. So it would run against some other inputs, and you can see here each test case is accepted. So here we can see time, memory, and result is accepted. So basically what was the last issue was runtime error. So basically whenever the program has some errors, compilation errors, then that time we get that error called as runtime error. So you can debug your code again and check for any errors, and then it should work fine. So similarly, this was the very basic approach which would come at the first of the mind. So at the first glance for the question, we would get this approach. But if we just look a bit more deeper, so what we can say is, let's just take again some random things. So 28 and 98. So basically this is first this value. So I will take the last elements 3, 1, 8, 8. So basically if I divide this by 10, I am getting 8 as a remainder. So basically if I use 318.8, so it isn't completely dividing. So why isn't it completely divisible? Because we know whenever divisibility of 10 is only possible, divisibility of 10 is only possible when the units place of the value has 0 in it. So basically if we see 10 divided by 10 is completely divisible, 20 divided by 10 is completely divisible, 30 divided by 10 is completely divisible. So whenever we have to divide, we have to check for divisibility by 10, we need the unit place to be 0. So basically if there is any random number, so let's just say 8, 9, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 0. So basically if there is a 0 at the last position, so then we can say that number is completely divisible. So instead of checking for each value the last terms, what we can do is we can only pick up the last element of the list, and we can check the last digit of the lastmost element, and then if it is 0, means it is completely divisible by 10. If it isn't, then there isn't problem. So here let's just implement this same thing. So now instead of looping through each of the element, what we have to do is basically we will have an array. So now instead of string, what we can do is we can take integer array. Okay. So here now every element is stored as an array. Here now we will check if the last element, so data of -1. So we can use negative indexing for the last element. If data of -1 mod 10 is equal to 0, means the last element is completely divisible, then we have then we don't need to check any of the other elements, because we are only considering we are only considering the last digit of last element. So here what if this is true, if we are getting 0, then we have to basically put answer equal to yes, and this if this is isn't, then else what we have to do is answer equal to no. So basically let's just compile and test and see whether this works or not. So here we can see sample test case passed. Let's just submit the code and see whether this works or not. So here you can see status accepted, and that was the code in Python. Similarly, I will quickly code this in C++ too for the people's wanting for the C++. So here we are getting value and we are getting the data in this array. So basically what we have to do is if So data of length of, okay, sorry. So data dot size. So we have an size method for the array. So size -1, or what we can do is we can put, we know the data size would be similar to the n, because n and data size are same. So we can also put n-1. We will check if n-1 mod 10 is equal to 0. Then what we will do is we will put answer equal to yes. So basically yes. Else what we have to do is else answer equal to no. Basically this is the code. We have to also declare the answer. So string answer, yeah. Let's just compile the test case and see whether it works or not. So it passes. Let's just submit this. And here you can see status accepted. So everything is working fine. So if you have any doubts, you can put that in the chat box. So till then, you can move ahead to the second question. So this is the basic question. So instead of this, what you can do is you can take this. This is more simpler than that one. So at first glance, these questions would seem pretty much big, but whenever you would try and think about it a bit, then it would become easy. So let's read what does this statement says. Before that, what's the name of this question? So it is kitchen timetable. So yeah, there are n students living in a dormitory of Berlin State University. So basically, this is the name of a university. So so each of them wants to use the kitchen. So the head of the dormitory came up with a timetable for kitchen's usage in order to avoid conflicts. The first student starts to use the kitchen at the time 0 and should finish the cooking not later than time A1. So there is some A1 time. Before that, he has to finish. The second student start to use the kitchen at time A1 and should finish the cooking not later than at the time A2. Similarly, like this, each student will get a set of time. So the nth student, so as we say there are n students living, so the nth student starts to use the kitchen at time an-1 and should finish the cooking not later than time an. So basically he should finish before or at an time. So the holidays in Berlin are approaching. So today each of the n students want to cook some pancakes. The ith student needs bi unit of time to cook. The students have understood that probably not all of them would be able to cook everything they want. How many students will be able to cook without violating the schedule? So basically, problems would seem kind of a big difficult and you will not get anything. So let's just directly move on to the sample test case. Here, most of the things will get clear. So here we can see there is an input. So first of all, the input is 2. So it is basically the test cases, how many test cases we have to perform. So then for each test case, we will get 3 lines. So as you can read here, the first line of each test case contains a single integer n denoting number of students. So here we can basically see there are 3 number of students. Then the second line contains n space separated integers a1, a2 up to an, denoting the moments of time by when the corresponding student should finish cooking. So when the first student has to finish at the time 1. So when this student second has to finish his cooking at time 10. For the third student, it is time 15. And the third line consists of n space separated integers, which is b1, b2, bn, which denotes the time required for the student to cook. So basically here, let's just see this in our format. So let's just remove this all, and the basic test case would be 3, then 1, 10, 15, and this one needs 1 unit of time, this one needs 10 unit of time, and the third one needs 3 unit of time as per the test case. So here this is n, this is a, we can consider this as array A, and this is array B. So B, so let's just see the whole problem again. So what are we basically asked to do is, there are 3 students in some kind of hostel. So let's assume there is an university and it contains hostel where there are 3 students. So each student loves cooking, and as there is a festival there in their hostel, so each student want to cook something. So the first students need 1 unit of time for cooking his dish, the second student needs 10 unit of time, the third student needs 3 unit of time, and so on. So this number may increase depending on the n. Similarly, to arrange all of the students, what has the hostel warden did? He gave the first student 1 unit of time. So he has to complete the cooking by 1 unit of time, 1 unit of time. And then the second students need to complete his cooking by 10 units of time. So basically, if we consider a timeline 0 to let's say infinity, so here there would be 1, 10, 15. So from 0 to 1, this time is given for student 1. Similarly, 1 to 10 is given for student 2. And then similarly 10 to 15, this time is given for student 3. So here let's just calculate how much unit of time each student have received. So here, starting from 0 up till 1, the student when has time this much. So here we can basically do 1 minus 0, which gives us 1 unit of time. Similarly, student 2 gets the time between 1 to 10. So you have to complete by 10. So what we can do is 10 minus 1, because he will start at 1 and he has to finish by 10. So 10 minus 1 would give us 9 units of time. Similarly, the third student will get the time in between 10 to 15. So basically what we can do is 15 minus 10. So here we get 5 units of time. So student 3 is getting 5 unit, student 2 is getting 9 unit, student 1 is getting 1 unit. So here basically what are we given in the P array is the time required for that student to create that dish. So basically for students need 1 unit of time and he gets 1 unit of time. So he can prepare. So 1 can prepare. So let's take a count. So it is 1. So basically second students need 10 unit of time, but he is getting only 9 units of time. So he can't prepare his dish completely. Then student 3 requires 3 unit of time, but he is getting 5 units of time. So here we can see basically this student can also prepare. So we can increment our counter and we can take the number as 2. So from 3 students, 2 students can successfully prepare their dish. And similarly, this list may go on. So let's just take another example for more clarity. So let's just take, there are 5 students and then array A would be 5, 9, 10, 15 and 20. So basically then the first student would require 3 units of time, the second student would require 10 units of time, third student would require 2 units of time, fourth student would require 5 units of time, and fifth student would require, let's say, 15 units of time. Okay, so this is basically A and this is basically B array and this is N. So what we can do is we have to basically loop through each element. We have to check difference between two elements. So 9 minus 5 would be, sorry, so we have to basically start from 5. So the first value would be 0 because timeline would be starting from the 0. So 5 minus 0 would give us 5, then 9 minus 5, then 10 minus 9, then 15 minus 10, then 20 minus 15. So 20 minus 15 is 5, 15 minus 10 is 5, so 10 minus 9 is 1, and 9 minus 5 is 4. So here these are the time gained by the students according to the schedule. So here let's just mark how many students can complete their dish. So here it is 3, it is less than equal to, so we can see yes, it can be made. So here student 2 requires 10 unit of time, but he is only given 4 units, so he can't prepare. Then here student 3 requires 2 unit of time, but he has only provided 1 unit of time, so he can't prepare. Student 4 requires 5 unit and he is given 5 units, so it works. Student 5 requires 15 units of time, but is only getting 5 units of time, so this doesn't work. So here we can see the number of students can complete is 2. So basically we have to print this 2. So what we have basically done, iterate over each element and then check the successive successive difference. So 9 minus 5, 10 minus 9, 15 minus 10, and 15 minus 20. So we have to check this with the simultaneous ith value. If it is less than equal to, then we will increment the counter. If it isn't, then we will do nothing because that student can't create his dish. So let's just go on to the question again and let's just create a program. So are you clear with the approach, or is there something, or are you facing some difficulties? So if there isn't any difficulty, then we can directly code. So here basically first of all we would need to take the elements. So the first value is t, number of test cases, then the number n, and then the a and b values. So basically for t we will take a variable t and we will accept it. Then so for I in range, so we have to loop through t times because t is the number of test cases. So here what we have to do is basically we have to consider n at first. So n number of students the dormitory have. Then after n we have to take a list of inputs which is a. So we can similarly use the map function which we learned yesterday. So map int input dot split, and then we can create this into list. So a similar way using list compression would be, so we will create a list at first, then for I in, or for x in input dot split. So we are basically splitting and we are getting each element in x. So what we are doing, we have to convert it into int. So int x would be, this would be another technique of taking the same thing, same value, a list of value in Python. So then what we can do is, now I have n, a and b. So as per our similar thing, the first value would be 0. So what we can do is, so as we are taking a list which has these a elements, so while calculating, as we saw, the first value should be 0, but we aren't having that value 0. Either what we can do is, so instead of explaining, let's just perform this. So for I index, so for any index I in range, so range would be the length of a, or directly we can put n. because length of a and n would be the same value. So then what we can do is, for each index, what we have to do is we have to basically take the differentiation. So sorry, we have to basically take the difference. So let me just create a value diff difference, which should take a of I, so current index, minus a of I minus 1. So basically, if I use this I minus 1, the starting value would be 0 in I. So here I will get a of 0, and then here I would get a of minus 1. So this in another languages would throw an error because we are going out of bound. But in Python, as we can support negative indexing, this would cause an error. So what we can do is we can put a if statement, if I equal to 0. So what we will do is diff equal diff would be directly equal to a of I. Okay. So if I is the first element, then we will directly put the difference as a of I. Else what we will do is, else we will do the other thing. So difference of a of I minus a of I minus 1. Then what we have to do is we have to consider a count of how many students can prepare. So valid, I will take a variable valid student, and it would be initialized by 0 at first. Then whenever, so what is our condition, that if the difference means the unit or the time given, so we can rename this to time given. So let's just rename this to time given instead of difference, time given per student. So if this time given is less than or equal to b of I, so because we are checking the same index, as we saw for 0th student, we will check the difference of 0 and 0 minus 1, or for any other case I. So for any index I, we will be checking I minus I minus 1 index. So we'll check the difference and then check it with the b of I. Means basically we will be checking out the same value from the b array. So then what would we do? If it is less than equal to, means that student can prepare. So if he can prepare, then what we will do is we will take this valid student and increment the count. So valid student plus equal 1. At last, for each test case, what we have to do is we have to print the value of valid student. So let's just take this sample test case. So let's just copy this and put it to the program and then compile and run. So let's see what happens. So here we can see successfully executed, and we are getting the value 2 and 2. So here for the second value, what are we doing? So let's just check it again. So 10, 20, 30, 15, 5, 2. So 10, 20, 30, 10, 20, 30, 15, 5, 2. So here number is 3. Here the difference is 10. Here the difference is 20 minus 10, which is 10. Here the difference is 30 minus 2, 30 minus 20, which is 10. So here, can this be performed? No. Can this be performed? Yes. Can this be performed? Yes. Basically 15, 5 to 30 minus 20, 20 minus 10. So 10, 10, 10 units. First can't be preparing, second and third can work. So let's just see why are we getting wrong answer. So each of student has 10 unit of time, but only the second one will able to be fit in time. Okay, so it is 15, 5, 20. So 15, 5, 20. So this can't be able to fit. So depending on our case, less than equal to, less than equal to, less than equal to should work. So why isn't this giving correct answer? So basically what we are doing is valid student. So if I is equal to 0, so between these two anyone will execute, and then so here it is successfully executed, but we are getting wrong answer. So let's just check for each valid, what are we getting. So we are basically getting 2 and 2. So why is this happening? So what we can do is we can print the time given for each, so the time underscore given for each of the test case. So basically, yeah, so let's just print this with a string so that we can know this is time given. So time given, and let's just compile and see what happens. So here the first value was 195. Okay, correct. So 10, 10 and 10. So then what is the issue? Let's just also print the valid student count. So valid student, here also we will print valid student. So here the first case, we have to see for the second case. So here for the first case it is becoming 1. So why is this? Valid student plus equals, okay, then it remains the same, then it remains the same. So there is some issue with the first case. So here a of I is 10, so we are getting valid time correct. So time given is 10 units, and b of I, which is b of 0, is 15 in this case. So this should return, let's just push this same condition and again try. So we have to basically put print statements, or if you have a good understanding about visual debugging, so you can use debugging too. But for now I will just print. So here why I'm getting true. So time given is 10 and b of I. So b of I is 15 in this case. So let's just print the b of I too. B of I, and before this a string b of I. Let's just compile and run. So here we are getting 15. So basically this is 15. He requires 15 amount of time, but he is given 10. So let's just check. If time is given, if time given is less than equal to this thing. So he has got 10 units of time, but he requires 50. Okay, here there is an issue that we have to check b of I should be, no, let me just think a bit. So 15 should be less than equal to 10. Why? Because uh, he requires 15 units of time, but he is given only 10 units. So here just there should be an interchange, that time given, and here should be b of I, because he has 15 units, he requires 15 units of time, but he is given 10. So we have to check whether 15 means whichever value he requires is less than or equal to the time given. So if that's the case, then this will work fine, or else it will give an wrong answer as we just saw. So similarly, now let's just compile and see whether this works or not. So here I am getting 2 and 1, so it is giving correct. So let me just submit this. So currently test case 1 is running, test case 4, and I'm getting wrong answer. So here, can anybody tell me why I'm getting a wrong answer? If you have given some, if you have concentrated a bit, then you could give an answer why I'm getting wrong answer. So you can also see the code. So can you specify why you are getting wrong answer? So basically what is happening here, the output is only required, that is 2 and 1. But as we use this debug statements, so what happened? This debug statements aren't considered as a result. So if we compile and run and then see, so here we are printing excess data. So here we can see time given, false, true, everything we are printing. This was just for our debug case. We just need to print 2 and 1. But as we were debugging our wrong code, what we did is we printed extra stuff. So this isn't required by the problem statement. So we have to remove this. So if we remove and then submit, now this should work correctly. So you can see here currently test case is running. After that you can see, so here you can see correct answer. So basically that was the issue. We just need to print whatever they have asked. So we will not print anything else such as answer equal to this thing, this, or something like case 1 answer is this, case 2 answer is this. We just need to provide whichever they have, whatever we have to provide the answer in whatever format they have provided. So basically in output we can see 2 and 1. Here we can also read, for each test case output a single line containing the number of students while students that will be able to finish the cooking. So basically this much students will be able to finish the cooking and this thing will be done. Similarly, so let's just copy this thing and we will head on to the C++ code. So C++ 14, we will add here the same thing. So instead of print, we will just modify this code a little bit. So instead of print, we will use cout, and then instead of plus equals 1, we can do value student plus plus, and if instead of this, we have to provide a bracket, and then yeah, single statement would work fine. Here also instead of this, single statement would work fine. But here for loop doesn't have a single statement, so we have to provide this. So after that, the valid student number would be an integer, so we have to provide this thing. And time given, so let's just also mention int time given. So time given, so that it is valid. So then instead of this thing, so instead of using for, we can use while t minus minus, and instead of using this, what we can do is int t first of all, and then c in t. So we have taken the input, then c in n, so int n c in n, and then we have to take this value. Basically what we can do is for int I equal to 0, I is less than n, I plus plus, and what we have to do is we have to basically create an array. So let's just create an array of size n plus 1, and yeah, so again an integer array b, which should also take n plus 1. So I'm just giving an extra space so that we can arrange a bit. So then what we have to do is Cn of a of I, basically take values for ai, and similarly this same loop will run again for b of I values, so for the values of b of I. So yeah, let's just compile and execute this thing, and let's see whether this works fine or not. Is there any compilation runtime error? So there is some compilation error, which is okay. So here, if you can clearly see, there is issue at the line 1315. So here we are basically giving a colon. So instead of colon, we have to choose semicolon. If I again execute, so as you saw, this is compilation error. While compiling, if there are some errors, that will be still. See, in A of I, A was not declared in this scope. A, A, A should be accessible. So error A was not declared in this scope. So array is globally declared. Just a second. I will just initialize this array. So int I equal to 0 is less than n I plus plus and c in a of I. So this should work fine. Okay, so there is some issue somewhere. Yeah, here for I in range, this is the issue. So for I in range n, this doesn't works in C++, so we have to use int I equal to 0 and I is less than n and I plus plus. So this is basically what we have to change. This isn't related. So we'll just compile and execute. Till C in n was not declared in this scope. So okay, while we haven't provided this body. So yeah, these things happen when we try to shift same code. So this should work. So basically the while body, as we say, whenever we use, uh, whenever we try, let me just say this. Time given was not declared in this scope. Okay. Yeah. So we don't have to provide again integer. Time given will be automatically created. So basically what happened in last time was, while we haven't given this opening and closing brackets, the body of the while. So basically whenever we don't provide anything, then while just consider the first statement as its body and other all statement as any other external code. So what was happening, it was just considering n, and this was the code of int main. So it was throwing an error. But now if I put the brackets along this and then try to execute, this should work fine. So let's just compile and execute. So kind of this was error due to convert. Still there is an error. Okay. Else, and then okay, semicolon is remaining. So these all things happen when we convert from Python to testing. Maybe I should have written from scratch. That should be quick because conversion creates compulsion error. So here we can see we are getting 2 1. So this similar thing we discussed yesterday. Why are we getting? Because we aren't printing end line. So if we now print end line, this should successfully work. So here you can see 2 and 1 getting printed. Let's just submit and see whether this is correct code or not according to their definition. So it takes a bit of a time. So here we can see correct answer. So basically this answer is correct as per our question. So these are basically the questions which were required to discuss. So if you have any doubts regarding any of these two questions, you can ask me. You can put your doubts in the chat box, and yeah, we will discuss if anything is there, or else maybe this should be all for today. So yeah, we solved two kind of a medium level, easy medium level problems, not that hard, but kind of medium easy. So kind of I'm saying that because the questions are too big. First of all, whenever the question is too big, we think that it is kind of a huge question. I'm not getting anything. How will I solve? Kind of by seeing the question length itself, we drop the idea of solving them. But kind of bigger questions are easier to solve because there is just a story behind this. If you get the main logic behind that, everything works smoothly. It would take time, but you can do this. So as you're currently watching this video, what you can do is you can simultaneously also try to code this thing. So depending on your request, if you want, I can wait for uh, few minutes so that you can try your approach and provide it. Or else what you can do is after ending of this session, you have to code this same question or similar question on any of the platform. You can go to any of the platform and you try to solve that question without seeing my code. So what would happen? Basically, you would get an idea of how the codes and things work and how should we approach. But while coding, the implementation is the main part. So sometimes the semicolon remains. Sometimes you will be unable to take input. You just forgot to take the inputs, or many things may happen. So whenever you try by your side, that time lot of things you will learn more than just seeing this session. So try to implement this on your side too, and yeah, that is all. So I will also provide this same question solutions on GitHub too. You can check that description after this session ends. I will just put this link of having all the codes which we solved so that you can refer to that after trying your solution. If you're still getting any issues, still struggling with some approach, then you can check that out. But for the first implementation, try by yourself so that you can see how much you have grasped and how much do you understand. So that's all for this lecture. Maybe if you have any questions, I will wait for a few minutes, and if there aren't, then we can stop this session. So thank you, Bhavesh. Thank you. So maybe you don't have any questions because I can't see any questions on the left chat. So yeah, that would be all for this session. So let's meet in a next session at 9 p.m. tomorrow.